Hello, and welcome to Broads and Books. I'm Erin.
And I'm Amy, and this is a special Broads and Books bonus episode.
Today on the Broads Talk Books With, we've got Ann Napolitano. She wrote Dear Edward, which I recommended in episode 60 about heartbreak.
And it broke your heart, didn't it?
Yeah, I needed a good cry at the time, and it delivered.
You got it.
It delivered.
Mm-hmm. We got Ann on Zoom and talked about her reading styles, her goals with writing, touching fan emails, and who makes her tongue-tied.
You'll find all the books she talks about in the show notes.
And now, here's our interview with Ann Napolitano.
Did you have a favorite book as a kid or a teen that you particularly remember? And why do you think it was one of your favorites?
Oh, God. Well, I mean, I read like voraciously,
Sure.
as one would expect as a child. I think it was like the best reading period of my life. I think like until I went to college probably, or maybe even high school. Like when then you have other responsibilities, but like the reading that you do when you're like a straightforward kid and you're bookish is, like I didn't even know there were genres, so I read everything and I didn't understand the distinction between young adult and child and grown up. So I like, read my way down the shelves. But probably, well, like Trixie Belden was my first love, the female detective, girl detective. But probably the first book that sort of, I think like switched on my writer brain in a different way was The Golden Notebook by Doris Lessing. I read that in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so unusual and so feminist, and it was unlike anything I had ever read. And so they're the things I think, like I also think of reading the short story Cathedral by Raymond Carver in college. And when I read that, I was like, it sort of blew off the top of my head. Like, so it's reading things where you're like, I didn't know that was possible.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing with like Beloved by Toni Morrison, where you're just like, did a human being write this? Like the sort of the capacity required and the imagination, and then the execution is like so inspiring and inspired that there are like few books like that where I was just like, oh my God, like what is possible, and then like what is possible within me in this. So it like lit me up in a way that fed into me being a writer as opposed to just a very voracious reader.
Mm-hmm. I think a strong argument could be made that Toni Morrison is not quite human. And
I don't think he is. I think there are a few people. I don't think Colson Whitehead is human either. And I actually know him, so I know he is human. He's married to my husband. So like I know he's a married man, and I've met his children.
So he's a human. That's disappointing almost.
I don't actually believe it. I feel like wearing some kind of a suit, because he writes really quickly too, and I'm like, how do you write like the Nickel Boys in less than a year? Like, I don't know. I don't understand. Amazing.
Infuriating.
Yeah.
Well, you touched on it a little bit about books or writers that made you want to be a writer. Is there any other ones that you remember thinking, this is something that I want to do?
I was like a huge Henry James dork as well in college. I went very deep into Henry James. There was something about he wrote such internal worlds, and I knew I was shy and quiet, and that it was the tiny turns of phrase and scene that like really lit me up. And he wrote a novel called The Ambassadors, where the main struggle of this enormous novel is that this man Strether regrets not having made choices earlier in his life and really not having had a life. And he's now sort of on the cusp of, taking that leap for the first time he's probably in his 50s or something. So that was very inspiring to me. And then when I read Ann Patchett for the first time, and I read her, like as she came out with her novels. So she's just a little older than me. So, and I remember being like, oh, maybe I could do this, like that she seemed like a human being that was alive at the same time, that was also a woman who, was doing something that I just loved, but felt accessible in some kind of a way from within my own brain, as opposed to like Toni Morrison, where I was just like, there's nowhere for me to start. I'm behind in like 14 different ways. So those are the ones that come to mind. Raymond Carver was a really big impact on me too. It was sort of the paring back of language, and you go through all these different phases as a reader and an English major, and then as a writer where you're imitating and then stripping away, and all those voices were instrumental for me. John Irving, I just would lie down in front of a truck for him. Like Owen Meany and A Widow for 1 Year and Garp. Like, I love those books so much. So like those, they all of them pulled me toward my own work in a way that was, nourishing.
Well, thinking about reading now, Erin and I always like to joke / lament about the fact that our TBR pile is just outrageous and will never be accomplished. Do you have, how many books would you say are on your TBR pile? And do you have a few that you're really excited to get to?
Yeah, my TBR pile is always, my husband's always chiding me over the state of my bedside table. Because he believes strongly that there should be one book there that you're reading right now. And I'm like, it has to be like one fiction, one nonfiction, and then the 3 books that I keep like picking up and putting back down again.
That's normal. Yeah.
That's as small as I can make it. I'm sorry. Actually, in the pandemic, I have started using a Kindle for the first time. I never used one, but I've been asked to write blurbs for books, and the publishers aren't sending galleys for obvious reasons during COVID to limit like the factory, work that needs to be done. And so in order to read these galleys, I needed to read them electronically, which I was really annoyed at. And I basically avoided reading them for like 2 months. And now
until the deadline approached.
One of the deadlines passed, but I was like, this is it's okay. There's like wiggle room. Obviously, they're asking you to, as a favor.
Yeah.
But actually, that has gotten me. I now actually really like it. So I've been reading more on the Kindle, and that makes me feel. I mean, I still love books, obviously, but during this time, for some reason, that's allowed me to sort of read exactly, given me the freedom to because like any book is open to me via the Kindle. And I don't have to go through like the ordering it from my bookstore to be delivered, and then not sure if was that a guilt read or was that like something I felt like I should read. So I feel like it's actually a streamlined for me, like to what is actually holding my attention and what book do I want to mainline right now. I just read Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell.
I just added that to my TBR pile. Yeah,
great! It's so good. Oh my god. It's about Shakespeare's family and the death of his 11-year-old son from plague, and the writing is spectacular. Shakespeare's wife is like one of the best characters I've ever read. Well, certainly in a long time. It's just, I am mad for it. I can't recommend it.
That's awesome.
I read that on my Kindle. So yeah, no, my TBR pile, with the combination of the strange thing of having to write blurbs, which I really didn't do very much of until Dear Edward came out, and now I'm sort of being asked a lot more, and that's like a weird thing because you can't get a sense of a book in the same way. You're just like, okay, and it's especially if it's an e-galley, you really don't know what you're getting into, which is kind of fun, but it's a very different experience, I find, for reading.
It would be hard. I read on a Kindle too, but I could see it would be really difficult for me, I think, if I had some kind of expectation with the book to not have that like physical copy and be able to, I don't know what it is about that, but
I know it's very, I just finished reading this book that's going to come out in 2021, I guess, by Kate Hope Day, who wrote a novel called If Then, I think it's called. That was her last novel. So this new novel that I was asked to blurb is called In the Quick, and it was described to me as being a take on Jane Eyre set in space. And I was like, what?
What? Okay.
And it was great. It was actually really great.
Wow.
But so like you get these like weird one sentences and you don't have the context and like the book, and I was just like, okay, I'm going to go in, and if I don't like it, I'm not going to blurb it. It's not like a commitment, but I actually ended up really loving it. So yeah, it's a strange new way to experience fiction.
Well, you might have answered our next question, but if there's any other books that have surprised you recently?
Surprised me. I feel like I'm surprised every time I read a book because
Yeah. Oh, that's
I like that answer. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I should hope that I'm surprised every time I read a book. I mean, I recently was asked to blurb something and I didn't blurb it because I didn't like it. But it's rare. I'm much more prone. I mean, I think this is an age thing, but like I will put a book down much more easily than I would have when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I think so much it's like where you are right now plus the book. So like, if it's not resonating with me right now and everybody loves it, I'll try again. I actually just started reading the Elena Ferrante, Our Brilliant Friend trilogy or whatever that everybody has been talking about.
Everyone raves about, yeah.
Yeah, and I never had. And so I just started it on the Kindle the other night. And I don't know, I'm feeling skeptical so far, but I mean, obviously it has to be good. People just love this thing.
Yes.
But I feel like there are some other books. Oh, in the beginning of the pandemic, I couldn't read contemporary fiction. That felt like too weird to me. So I read like Philip Pullman's newer book in the his Dark Materials, and that was wonderful. And then I read Hilary Mantel's new book in the final book in the Cromwell series, The Mirror and the Light, because I couldn't so I feel like it's so much now is even more like heart and intuition driven, like what gives you any sort of like satiation or peace or pleasure, and it feels extra specific these days, like what feeds us and what doesn't. Maybe in a way that's instructive for us as we go forward and listening to that part of ourselves better, because now I feel like we're also like worn down and freaked out, like on this very elemental level that like you're immediately aware of whether this helps or doesn't help in a way that I think when our lives are more padded out and quote unquote normal, it's harder to access that that voice. So, I mean, I don't know, maybe we'll be able to carry that forward past these end times.
That's a good point. Erin and I have talked about that a lot, that at the beginning of the pandemic, we were having a hard time getting into reading and just focusing. But also as we've gotten older, and in the last few weeks and months too, just we are ready to cut a book loose if it's not appealing to us. But
I mean, there's just no reason to.
I mean, this shows we have limited time, so yeah.
And I swear I'm not saying this just because we're interviewing you, but I told Amy that it was your book that got me over the hump of not being able to read. I had a really good cry, and then I was like, okay, I'm ready.
Oh, that's nice. I'm glad.
I'm ready again. Okay.
I feel badly for people. I don't know. It's sad. So I don't know. I mean, I appreciate that some people are finding it cathartic as opposed to too much on top of what's going on.
I know you mentioned that you get a lot of books now to blurb, so books are coming to you instead of maybe finding books on your own. But how do you normally find your book recommendations?
It's normally it's like recommendations either from people that I respect, like on Twitter, other writers. My agent has really similar tastes to me. So actually I recently read Ask Again Yes by Mary Beth Keane that came out last year, which my agent had told me like 4 times that I was going to love. And then, I mean, it had done really well. And I read that, I guess, on Kindle too. And I loved it. It was wonderful. Such good storytelling. So I feel like you do pick up like a spidey sense for what books are going to suit you. Like as soon as I heard about Hamnet, I was just like, oh, that sounds so interesting. Like my radar is always going. And it's like a combination of who recommends it and what it's about that, and some of them I'll put off. Like if a book is huge, I don't want to read it. Like, and I don't think it's like a professional jealousy thing. It's like a kind of like peer pressure thing where I don't like to do what all the cool kids are doing. I'll read it like a year or 2 years later. I'm not usually first to like the huge book, but I'm looking for like something that sounds interesting and is well recommended.
Well, in your book, Dear Edward, like we mentioned, I definitely ugly cried a few times during it. Are there any particular books that inspired you specifically in writing that book?
Probably like all of the above that I said, like John Irving and Patchett. It's like
Sure.
the books with heart. And it's like the emotional, it's actually interesting. Well, interesting to me is the people that give one star to Dear Edward. There aren't that many, but the ones that do it because they say that nothing happens in the book. That's always their complaint, which I always find really funny because it's about a plane crash.
Yeah, there's like a specific event.
Yeah, but they're
Very.
right. They're also right. They're right in that if they're looking for like action packed, like that's just not how I write. It is a funny juxtaposition with the fact that I wrote about a plane crash, and it makes me think that I actually need to write about something like as huge as a plane crash in order to like keep people's attention. Because what interests me is like the emotional microfibers of the book, and in this sense, Edward's path through the book. So the books that sort of inspire me are ones that are like richly believable worlds, whether that's Philip Pullman or John Irving, where like books where you just love the characters. And like my sort of dream would be to write a book like where someone hugs it to their chest. Because that's how I feel about the books that I love and the characters that I love in them. I really like writing about like kind people. There's like different things like that certainly are sprinkled through like all the books that I love. But like cold and clinical, sort of, no matter how remarkable the prose is, never holds my interest. Like it's writers who come from a place of like human intelligence and heart that interest me. But like structurally or whatever, that was all intuitive and not sort of taken from anything that I'm aware of.
Like you said, the sum of all of the parts, probably. Yeah. We also like to ask a little bit about, your experience as being an author. And I know that you may have had a little bit of curtailed events and things, but do you have a particularly memorable fan interaction after Dear Edward came out, or even before?
It is curtailed, but then people write to me every day. It's funny now because of social media, like it's like you used to now I get emails from like older people, and I get people write to me on Instagram, like direct message me. I think it's nice for people to do it there for them, because the people who write me the most sort of moving things do it on Instagram because no one else can see it. And whereas on Twitter, you can't DM someone unless you're following each other or something. So someone wrote to me on Instagram like this week and said that her father had committed suicide when she was 7, and that Dear Edward had made her realize that it was okay that she was never going to get over it, and that that it was okay that she had continued to carry that with her and to carry him with her for her whole life, and that didn't mean there was something wrong with her. So it's like it's emails like that. I just got one today from a 73-year-old who said it was some of the emails are so beautifully written. This is very short, and she said that when she was 6, her sister fell off. Her sister, who was 5, who she was very close to, fell off a swing and died. And I was like, fell off a swing and died. I know. And she said that she felt like she had been carrying her sister and her sister's warmth with her for her whole life, and she felt like her sister was still with her. And she's 73. And she said, she quoted like this line that Dr. Mike says in the book when he and Edward run into each other at the shopping center toward the end, where, he says to him, why I still think about it all the time. I feel like there's something wrong with me for that. And he said, it lives under your skin. It's part of you. And what we've been trying to do is, make it okay for you to live with that. And so she quoted that or whatever. So like, it's those interactions where I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. I know, it's very, very moving.
No, I imagine it must be very emotional to get some of these messages regularly and kind of unexpectedly too.
Yeah, it's very, I feel like blessed is like a terrible word or like a religious word or something, but I feel very like grateful and very like undeserving in a sense, because I feel like they're writing to Dear Edward. I realize I wrote Dear Edward, but I don't know, it's very, very moving, and I'm very I'm very glad that if for anyone that it provided, any kind of like healing or whatever. That was obviously not something that I had in my mind when I was writing it.
Well, in your becoming a published author, was there anyone that you wanted to meet and did?
You mean like a writer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, see, because I worked as a personal assistant for the musician Sting for like 8 years, so I met like a bajillion famous people.
What?
When I was in my 20s to early 30s. That was what I did to make a living while I was writing the first book I published.
Oh my gosh.
I know. So that's what I thought of first, because I've met all the famous people. But the writers, I don't want to meet the writers that I love the most. Like, I really don't want to. Like, they're like the last people I would like to meet. And actually, every time I do see Colson Whitehead at like an event or whatever, because I'm married to he's married to my agent, and we run in similar circles or whatever, I always just babble at him, because I immediately go into like talk really fast, because he's like kind of socially awkward, and it kicks in my like I need to make him comfortable, and of course I'm making him uncomfortable by like sweating and speed talking at him.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I don't know. I mean, I can't say that I have. If I had, it would be him, I guess. But out of the writers. But I mean, I work for a literary magazine, and in New York City, there's so many writers, and that's wonderful. It's mostly wonderful because I'm not like in the scene. I never wanted to be. It's not my thing. But like, it's nice to go to a reading and see amazing. Our bookstores have all the I'll get to go see Lauren Groff or whoever. They all come through, and you go to this amazing independent bookstore in Brooklyn, and I'll know a bunch of people there, like a bunch of writers. But no, that I think writers make each other uncomfortable on the whole, physically in person.
Yeah, that's
We're all weirdos. Like, we're all super introverted. I mean, not all of us. Some of us are. There are a few extroverts scattered among it.
That's a strange thing, though. Yeah, you don't see that very often.
Yeah.
Are you close to Books or Magic at all?
Yeah. That's what I was thinking of, actually. So they have amazing events, and I know Emma Straub, who
owns it.
Is Books Are Magic.
Mm-hmm.
And she is. I was actually thinking of her when I said we're not all introverts, because Emma Straub is not an introvert. She is like, she's a hardcore extrovert, and she's like the most like she's made of like gumdrops and glitter. Like she what you see is what you get. She just like, she radiates this aura of like just glitter bombs on everyone. And she loves on books and loves on writers. Like, she's spectacular.
Wow.
Yes. So yeah, Books Are Magic.
Gumdrops and glitter, Erin. We got to remember
that.
one.
Yeah, that's life goals right there.
Yeah, it should be.
Yeah, right.
Do you have like one particular book that you think everyone should read?
I think everybody should read, trying to remember if I can remember the whole title of it, Andrew Solomon's Far from the Tree. Oh God, I gotta look it up. It's absolutely enormous, and it's nonfiction, and I'm Googling it so I don't. He is a wonderful nonfiction writer. He is a gay man, and he was raised when it was really frowned upon to be gay, and his mother did not want him to be gay. And he, in this book, chapter by chapter, goes and sort of and does an in-depth study of people who are suffering from various sort of discriminations. Little people, deaf people, I want to say incarcerated people. Each chapter has its own group that he goes and spends time with like 4 different families that are in that area. It's a work of radical compassion. It stretched me inside of myself when I read it. The kind of love and empathy that you feel for each of these groups by the time you get to the end of the chapter is really remarkable. And I feel like we all need to be stretched like that.
Man, that sounds incredible and helpful reading, especially for this political season.
Yeah.
At the end of our episodes, we always like to talk about pop culture that we're obsessed with right now, whether that's music, a podcast, TV show, movie? Is there something that you're obsessed with in the pop culture realm?
Oh gosh. Well, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm also really my family is really into NBA basketball.
Oh,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And my new novel has basketball in it. So I'm kind of really dorkily into
It's research.
Yes,
Yeah.
I've read a bunch of nonfiction books about basketball in the last like 2 years. The best one I read is called The Breaks of the Game by David Halberstam, who's like a Pulitzer Prize winning historian. So amazing book. So yeah, I'm a little obsessed with everything that's going on in the NBA. And then like I love Busy Phillips on Instagram, and I just started listening to her new podcast. That would be very poppy and light. I'm kind of really fascinated by the fact that Rachel Hollis, the self-help writer, is getting divorced. I don't know if you know who that is, but I follow her on Instagram, and I'm like, what happened? Because they were outwardly facing very daily basis. We're happily married. In the honesty, like we tell everything, and then they just abruptly announced they were getting divorced. Like, that's really fascinating to me.
That's the girl wash your face one, right?
Yeah. Well, I haven't read her books. Like,
I haven't either. Yeah.
I'm also like completely obsessed with Glennon Doyle being married to Abby Wambach. Like that marriage. I'm like, do I get to marry Abby Wambach? I didn't realize this was like on the table as an option. Like that you would end your marriage and marry Abby fucking Wambach. It is awesome. So they fascinate me too. Yeah, that would be like as a sort of like strange pop culture corners of the internet. I listen to a lot of basketball podcasts. Like that's where I'm stretching out.
Wow. I'm really intrigued about both of the Rachel Hollis situation. I'm going to check that out after this.
I did not know that. Yeah.
Look on Instagram. They announced it like a month ago, and now they're in separate houses. It was a big thing. Yeah. And I had been watching. They have like a morning show that they were doing together that they could released as a podcast that I would listen to like a few days a week while I was running or something, and they were just chatting away in their daily podcast thing as if everything was great.
Oh my gosh!
Yes.
Oh.
Something major happened there.
That was her decision, but I don't know what happened.
Oh.
Well, those were our questions, but before we end this, I want to hear more about working for Sting. Was there any particular celebrity encounter you remember either fondly or not so fondly?
Well, I mean, I really met like all the sort of, I mean, I'm older than you guys, but like all the stars of my day, like from my growing up, like James Taylor, Madonna, Brad Pitt.
I think you may be thinking we're not the same age, but
thanks.
we're in our 40s, so yeah.
All right, I'm in my 40s too. I met all of them. It's like funny when a part of the reason I did that job, and you can only do that job if you're not a starstruck human being. Like you can't ask someone for their autograph when you're working for Sting. Like it's very inappropriate. So like whoever walks into the office, you're just like, hello, good morning. No matter if it's like, they just blew your mind. You have to hide that.
Oh my gosh.
So that was like part of, and I have that personality, so it works well. So weirdly, I think it ends up being like things that trigger you from your childhood. They had a house in Malibu, and I was out there working, and there's like a courtyard outside the office window in their house. And I looked out the window one day, and John McEnroe was talking to Bjorn Borg right outside the window. And I was just like, and I watched, the only sport my family watched growing up was tennis, and like Bjorn Borg was like, it was like the biggest thing. I had no preparation. No one had said these two tennis icons are coming over. Like, so there's no warning. And I couldn't even like gather myself together for like 45 minutes because I was like, John McEnroe. It was so random. It's like, it ends up being the random ones where you're just like, you don't know what to do with yourself. I will say Gwyneth Paltrow was incredibly nice.
Really?
Yeah, like so normal and nice, which I feel like goes against the.
Totally goes against.
She was like among like off the top of my head the most normal famous person that I met.
Wow.
That's
her
yeah.
dealings with people. Yeah.
Aaron, you and I would be terrible at that job.
So bad.
There's
Nope.
no
Yeah.
way we could, do
Yeah.
the, faking it, and we don't think it's a major deal thing. Yeah.
No.
No,
I get like excited talking to authors. I get sweaty. So I don't, they'd be like, day one, you're terrible. Get out of here.
yeah, it's like you need a weird like chromosomal like thing missing in your head, which I had, where I was like, oh yeah, Bruce Springsteen. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. But not for Bjorn Borg. That one.
I was not prepared, and it just like it hit me where like my inner 10-year-old was just like, oh my god, they were on television.
Well, she's a delight.
Such a delight.
So,
And again, it was
wonderful.
so fun to like talk to her and
Yes.
see her where she was sitting and, facial expressions, all that good stuff.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. And I like that she has the same suspicions that we do, that Toni Morrison and Colson Whitehead are indeed not human.
Yeah. I mean, I've thought it for a while. We both have. And she seems to validate that. I also like how her husband gives her crap for her bedstand because she reads multiple books at a time and he doesn't quite understand that. And I say that relationship has to go.
You're out, buddy. Of course I read multiple books. I like it. I also like that. I thought that was a great answer, that she's surprised every time she reads. That's terrific.
I know. That's what we're always seeking. And that's really cool that she finds that. I like that she wants her readers to experience her writing in a way that hugs, you hug her book to your chest. And I love that
Yes.
idea. Like,
Yeah.
I think that you and I, the books that we've loved, that's kind of how we feel.
Absolutely. And with that, the idea of some of the fan emails she gets, the losses and loves, and how beautiful and wonderful that must be that you wrote something that touches them, but also how overwhelming that could be to have all of
Emotional.
that. Yes.
Yeah.
And I can see that because that book is so emotional. And then to have people relate to those experiences must seem like a gift, but also a really heavy gift.
Yeah. And it brought you to tears.
I
while we were
got
doing it.
teared up
Yeah.
again in the interview.
Well, yeah, it was the woman that was talking about her sister on the
Yes.
swing and it
I
was.
carry her with me.
Yeah, that was
Oh,
rough.
man.
That was
Yeah.
rough. And then she worked for Sting, and mentioned it like it was no big deal, of course.
Yeah, what a
Yeah.
throwaway comment. I've never seen someone just be like, oh, yeah, I was an assistant to Sting.
It was interesting to dig a little further and see who really made her fan struck. It wouldn't have been
Yes.
who made me fan struck.
No.
But also discovered that she has the ability to just be like, it's cool. I don't get,
Yeah.
like tongue-tied or anything around them. And I'm like, well, we would not do well.
No, we wouldn't. I basically got tongue-tied around her. So I'm out. I mean,
At one point during the interview, you asked a question and she said, ooh, good question. And I looked at you to see how you were responding. And I think I saw a little bit of a moment of glee on your face.
well, yeah. I mean, I like it. I'm not going to lie. It also feels always like a little bit of stolen glory, though, because you really wrote the interview questions. So I don't know if it's really fair to take credit, except for the delivery.
The delivery is
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
Because you always put a spin on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll go
Own
with
it,
that.
Erin.
Okay, I'm owning it.
Yeah.
I don't like to
Jeez.
steal things. Unless it's out of the bulk bin at the grocery store.
And then you're like, no, I don't want to steal it.
No, then I do want
Then
to
you
steal
do
it.
want to
yeah.
steal it. Okay. Well, guess what? We will be back next Wednesday. In the meantime, head to our website, broadsandbooks.com, and check out all of our author conversations.
We've talked to some killer authors, and there's more coming all the time.
Subscribe now, and you'll get them all direct to you.
Happy reading.